So welcome back to Tech and Gaming Reviews here with another video for you guys. So this television that we have right now, which we've talked about it like multiple times on this channel, and we have officially have had this television for roughly getting ready to be 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And this television actually did come out roughly 3 years ago. And honestly, I am still very, very pleased and still impressed with this television. And as you already can tell from the title of the video, it is the Sony X900H. Now, I originally got this TV. This was originally like my first ever truly like 4K 120 hertz, refresh rate capable television. And honestly, just by the picture quality, I'm still very, very shocked and I'm still impressed with it. And this is coming from somebody who also has a Samsung S95B QD OLED as well as an LG C1, regular OLED panel, as well as some other high-end LCD TVs like our new one, the Hisense U8H, and as well as the Samsung QN90B. And for some whatever reason, the Sony X900H here is still doing a fantastic job. And yes, we definitely spent a lot of hours on this television, especially within the first year after we had it. Granted, we like to switch, TVs off and now, every now and again because, the different picture presets and calibrating and all that good stuff. But after having some higher end model TVs, I just can't understand how good that the Sony X900H, and especially 3 years later, is still holding up extremely well. The contrast is still really good overall. The local dimming is still pretty decent and good overall as well. So you're not going to really get very much blooming as you would on some other high-end LCD TVs, especially some of Hisense's lower-end TVs and TCLs, which with those ones, their local dimmings are mediocre, so they're not bad and they're not great, but they're in the middle. But this one is still in the green, as from ratings.com, with a 7.5 out of 10. And honestly, there will be some blooming. That's always going to be the case when it comes to an LCD TV. But this TV is still, with its local dimming performance, it's still incredibly good, and you're not going to get as much blooming, especially if you sit decently far back from it. So, and the contrast, like I said, is still decent overall. The colors are also still decent. The performance and response time is still really, really good. And the brightness, might not get as bright as some other TVs like the Samsung QN, Neo QLED series, and even the Hisense U8H. But it's also definitely bright enough, in my personal opinion, especially where you're seeing that there's a decent bit of light coming in from a window that you're seeing that's glowing the apartment itself. The brightness is still okay overall and still good overall. Now, this is still brighter than some of LG's traditional OLEDs, especially our C1, but it's not a huge difference in all that, but it does make up a big difference when you compare the LG C1 from this bad boy. So the brightness is basically in between from a regular OLED and from high other LCD TVs. So the brightness on this is still honestly fantastic in my opinion. And even though this Sony television is rocking with Sony's old X1 processor instead of their new XR processor that started with the 2021 X90J series and then all the newer models and even the newer ones coming out here in the next month or so, the X1 processor is still incredibly good. like you can see we're on our PlayStation 5 on the main menu, and texts are still insanely clear. The quality is still really good. It's still there. The performance is still good. The HDR performance, especially, still is pretty fantastic overall. It still brings in spectacular highlights. I don't know how to pronounce that word, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it still brings in really good highlights with the HDR performance. And like, the TV is still holding extremely well and still holding its own over its competition, and some even newer TVs coming out the last year or so, and even new ones coming out this year, like the Sony X900H. Like, I don't understand it, like how this TV is still holding up very, very well. So if you are somebody that does watch this video and you do have a X900H Sony, whether if it's the 55-inch or the size that we got, the 65, or even higher, 75 or 85 inches, you should definitely be proud of having a good quality TV, which I'm sure that most of you that do have it, that watch this, are probably going to be proud. Because I'm telling you, like, this TV is very, very close to an OLED level, and it's still got great colors, great HDR highlights, great gaming performance, and and great, still decent brightness. Like, I don't understand how this TV is still holding up, especially with all these newer ones, and especially with the new QD OLED TVs and such. Like, I don't understand how this TV is still holding up extremely well. But yes, the Sony X900H is still, it's still one of the best TVs still that we have ever bought. And I have seen a lot of improvements, especially going with an OLED and then higher-end Samsung LCD TVs like the QN90A, for an example. And now our QN90B that we got swapped with our 90A because it was a bad unit. Like, the Sony X900H is still doing a fantastic job at picture quality and especially performance and all of that. Now, there is one downgrade that I do have to mention with it, especially if you're somebody that was thinking about getting the X90K or the X90J or something like that, or whatever. There is a downgrade compared to those two newer models. Now, the downgrade with the X90J, or not X90J, I mean to say, the downgrade with this X900H over the X90J and 90K is, yes, this TV does have local dimming, and yes, this TV does have variable refresh rate from a firmware update a year and a half ago from Sony, but the X90J and the X90K can have local dimming turn on and also have variable refresh rate also turn on. Whereas on the X900H, you are pretty much going to have to choose whether if you want the higher native contrast or if you want the native contrast on the panel and you're okay with it, but you want the better, frame rate with the variable refresh rate that's supposed to help from screen tearing. Now, granted, if you have a PlayStation 5 and you play that on this particular TV, I honestly don't think that variable refresh rate is, it's very, very helpful. It does help improve the gaming experience. But really, the variable refresh rate is actually supposed to help with screen tearing. So, but if you have a PlayStation 5, Sony's exclusives is incredibly good, and they perform insanely well. And Sony does take the best time with their developers at producing their exclusives, like the Uncharted series, The Last of Us, and usually they perform very, very good overall in performance. So, if you have a PlayStation 5 and you love all these games, honestly, especially like the exclusive games, honestly, variable refresh rate probably ain't, it's probably going to be okay with variable refresh rate turn on, because Sony does usually take the time and effort to do their games and their games usually do perform very, very well, even on a console that does not support variable refresh rate at all, which is the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 Pro. So really, if you have a PlayStation 5, you would be fine without variable refresh rate turn on. But if you're somebody that has an Xbox Series X, I know that some Xbox exclusive games don't work all that well, and there's been even some third-party games that perform better on the PS5 than they do on the Series X. So if you have a Series X as well, honestly, you would probably want variable refresh rate turn on for the Series X. But if you want it on or off on the PlayStation 5, honestly, I think you would be probably good and still be okay with variable refresh rate basically turned off on the PlayStation 5, considering that some third-party games are actually performing better in performance on it, and then as good as the exclusives are with Sony taking their time, you would be technically perfectly okay without variable refresh rate on. So that is the downgrade with the Sony X900H over the newer previous models. But it's actually still not that big of a deal, honestly. Honestly, even if you turn variable refresh rate on, the contrast is still going to look decent because it's a VA panel. So really, it's a good choice, you know. But with this TV, you would have to definitely choose one over the other, whether if you want the better performance with VRR turn on, or if you want the better contrast and you don't care for the performance as long as the game performs good, then you got that option for you too. But if you're a PlayStation 5, you would be okay with variable refresh rate turned off. But if you have an Xbox Series X or even an Xbox One X, as you're seeing below our Pro, then you're more than likely going to want variable refresh rate turn on. So honestly, with the Sony X900H, 2.5, 3 years later, honestly, I'm still very, very impressed with this TV. Coming from a QD OLED owner and a regular OLED and some other high-end LCD TVs, like the X900H is still freaking spanking fantastic, especially here in 2023. So if you're somebody that has this TV already that do watch this video, I'm just going to let you know on a nice term that you still got a really, really good quality picture TV out of a lot of other TVs. So yeah, if you have the X900H, still to this day, even if it's the 55, 65, 75, or 85-inch versions, you're still in luck because the picture quality is still really fantastic. Even with Sony's old X1 processor, the picture still looks very, very crisp and very, very clean, even at lower resolution content at like 1080p or 720p. It attempts to upscale 4K to 4K from those lower resolutions extremely well. So yeah, the Sony X900H in 2023, after almost 3 years of usage, honestly, I'm still very impressed. I still am very, very impressed with this TV, with its colors, performance, contrast, gaming performance, and brightness, and HDR. You know, like, it's still a killer. And like I said, this is coming from somebody that has a QD OLED, as well as a regular traditional LG OLED, and a Samsung Q90B, a high-end LCD TV. Like, the X900H is still incredibly great in 2023. So if you have this TV, whether if it's whatever of the four sizes, you should definitely be proud, because even though I've noticed some picture quality is getting better, the Sony X900H is still holding a very, very close spot in our hearts, especially with its performance and picture quality, especially 3 years later. So I hope you all enjoyed this video of us giving another review of the X900H 3 years later. So be sure to hit that like button if you enjoy this content. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new to this channel. And also be sure to leave us a comment down below of your thoughts if you are somebody that still has this X900H series television of Sony, and if you're still very, very happy with it, or if you have one of Sony's newer models like the X90J or the X90K or the X95K or whatever newer Sony models that are out. But yeah, just leave us a comment down below of your thoughts if you're somebody that still owns this TV and you're still very, very satisfied with it. But that pretty much does it for our video for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. So rate, comment, subscribe. This is Tech and Gaming Reviews, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.